Sometime last year, I was shopping with my family in Midtown Manhattan, and we just happened to walk by the Tiffany and Company building, and we saw this huge Tiffany and Company billboard displaying a picture of Rosé from Blackpink. When we saw this, we both talked about how cool and yet strange it felt to see a Korean K-pop idol being the face of one of the most iconic American luxury brands. Well, technically, it's sort of French because it's now owned by LVMH, but you know what I mean. I was awestruck by this whole thing. I'm actually a big fan of Rosé. I think she has one of the most attractive and sexy voices ever. You should check out her unplugged live singing on this TV show called Sea of Hope. You can find full song clips on YouTube. Just type in Rosé and Sea of Hope. You should get some hits. Just a few basic instruments and Rosé's amazing voice. No autotune for sure. So whenever I walk past this Tiffany and Company building, it reminds me of Audrey Hepburn's classic American film, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Many of my viewers are in their 20s and 30s, so you might not get the reference here. I mean, this movie came out in the early 60s, I think, so even way before I was born. But this movie is considered a timeless classic film, and my parents' generation certainly grew up watching this. If you don't know the movie, you might have heard this song before. Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heart breaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. Does it ring any bells? You've heard it before, right? That's, of course, the famous song Moon River. It was originally sung by Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It won an Academy Award for Best Original Song. Oh, by the way, the Tiffany and Company flagship store in New York has recently opened a cafe called the Blue Box Cafe. You now can actually have breakfast at Tiffany's. My wife and I are thinking about going there. My Korean-born, Korean-educated Korean wife, who is a bit younger than I am, hasn't seen the movie yet. I watched it a long time ago in either in my high school English class or American history class. I don't know which one, but something transpired to watch this movie in class. The girls were mesmerized by Audrey Hepburn's hair and beautiful jewelry and all the glitter of living in New York City. The boys thought the movie was generally terrible, right? Boring. And I was going through very different emotions, actually. I was probably the only person in class feeling embarrassed, uncomfortable, and upset. Why? Because of this supposedly Japanese character in the movie, Mr. Yunioshi. The guy is portrayed as this uber obnoxious, short, ugly Japanese neighbor of Holly, Audrey Hepburn's character, with an almost incomprehensibly thick accent. The kids in my class thought it was hilarious to watch this guy doing a ridiculous, grossly exaggerated slapstick humor. It may be hard to believe, but it was the 90s and I was the only non-white student in my small private high school in the South. I mean, I was considered pretty tall, and I also played a competitive team sport on the school varsity team, and academically I was one of the top students, so I didn't have to encounter a lot of racism on a day-to-day basis, but there were still some moments that would be considered absolutely racist, and it would be all over social media if they were to take place today. But back then, this type of behavior was quote-unquote acceptable, and there was no social media. So here we are in the classroom, the kids I hang out with every day, and some of whom I considered as my best friends, laughing at this character without a moment of hesitation. I think I was offended and yet so confused that I couldn't quite articulate how I felt at the time. I brushed my feelings aside and just moved on without saying anything because why make an issue out of something which no one will be able to see from my perspective? Like I said, I was the only non-Caucasian student in my school and things were a little different back then. What's even more remarkable was that Mr. Yunioshi was actually not Japanese at all, but a white actor named Mickey Rooney. What they did to create this Japanese character was that they taped Mickey Rooney's eyes to make his eyes look slanted. And they made him wear this set of prosthetic buck teeth. It's bad enough that the movie's only Asian character is portrayed as this incredibly obnoxious klutz with a horrible accent. And what's even more offensive is that instead of hiring a real Asian actor, they used a white actor with ridiculous makeup and props. You know, this is a reflection of how Japanese/Asian men were perceived at the time. Sadly, this was routinely done in movies back then. White actors and actresses playing Asian characters with those hideous taped eyes. Now, fast forward to present days, Rosé is the face of Tiffany & Company. Jenny is the face of Chanel. The Korean movie Parasite won the Oscars. 4 awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best International Feature Film. It became the first non-English language film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. How about the Korean Netflix series, Squid Game? It's the most watched original Netflix TV series of all time. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of this particular series because it's too cruel and violent to my taste, but great acting and the story is very original. And then there's BTS, probably the biggest and perhaps one of the greatest bands of all time. Although the stiff-necked, proud Grammys Award winner decision makers still love to snub BTS. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. They have the audacity to ignore the modern-day Beatles. Actually, I think BTS is bigger than the Beatles at this point, in my opinion. Hey, but who cares about the Grammys? Or scammies, as some may call it, when you have the army. It's too small for you, BTS. Don't worry about that. As a Korean/Asian man in America, I'm especially so proud of BTS because these are the guys who have given many of us hope and sense of pride. We're not some faceless, asexual, subhuman beings. We are real people. We too can be passionate. We too can be angry, happy, get offended. We too have real emotions. I also love the fact that BTS is so unapologetic about their Koreanness, right? They sing in Korean, they speak Korean, and they're not embarrassed by their English. Suga comes on tonight's show and just speaks Korean. They understand very well that the most Korean thing can be the most international thing. Listen, I don't think the Korean language will ever be as widely used as English, and I love the English language too. But I always tell people that Korean, the language Korean, is a language of love. I love the way it sounds. I think that plays an important role in K-pop too. And the Korean language has this incredibly poetic onomatopoeia. To give you some examples, the way soup bubbles are bursting, 보글보글, 보글보글. The way Korean barbecue is grilled, 지글지글. I mean, we even add sound to words that have nothing to do with the sound. The way an animal slowly walks to look for a prey, aslang. The blue-collar things express their blueness, 파릇. The way red-collar things express their redness, 붉긋. The way things are wet in a good sense, like moist chocolate cake, 촉촉하다. The way things are wet in a bad sense, like damp wallpaper, 축축해. The sound of soft breeze, 살랑살랑. Or the way you move your butt, 실룩실룩. The way clouds form, 뭉게. Here's my favorite. The way a little infant walks, 아장. Incredible, right? I just love how cute they sound. So, just past Thursday, I had to work late and I took an Uber home. It was like 10 or 11 p.m. As I got closer to Central Park, I saw so many people sitting on the parkside pedestrian street of Fifth Avenue. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, many of these people have been waiting like this since Monday for Jungkook's concert at Central Park on Friday morning. The most dedicated and amazing fans BTS has. Man. Listen, I'm terribly sorry that the concert was cut short because of the thunder and torrential downpour. I was actually worried about you guys, ARMY. Hope everyone made it back home safely. Albeit short, I thought Jungkook put on a fantastic show. Amazing performance. To be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous about how he would pull this off alone. You know, he's our maknae, the youngest member of BTS, but wow. I was really impressed. Did you guys notice how comfortable he looked on stage alone? I mean, he didn't look nervous at all, and he performed like he'd been doing this for years. I'm telling you, the kid has some chutzpah. By the way, I am still trying to process Jungkook's new song, 7. The naughty version, of course, I'm referring to. I'm not going to comment on this yet. I'm sure many of you are still processing this. I'm thinking about doing a whole episode on his new song, 7. So please stand by. Anyhow, I'm very proud of BTS and of course our maknae Jungkook. You guys are awesome. Keep up the good work. I think there are huge pools of potential fans / ARMY that are just waiting to be tapped into. Just be yourself. Just keep evolving and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, BTS. I'm so proud of you guys.